Welcome to F1 or F Off, your audio pit stop for F1 news, interviews, and race reviews. I'm your host, Idris.
Oh, I'm Gabe. I didn't learn the language. I didn't learn a new language. I didn't learn how to say. Damn it! I said I was going to do it.
You can say Je m'appelle Gabe. That's
Je
French.
m'appelle Gabe.
And I am retired.
I'm retired.
All right.
Yeah, no, I should have done that. I'm such a busy bee these days. I'm just so busy.
Yeah.
With a lot of stuff, so.
Yeah. Anything?
What are you gonna do?
Anything you can tell the people about what you're so busy on? As I drink from my liquid death.
That's right.
Sponsor us.
I'm fueled by liquid death, like 100%. Buried alive. Give it to me. Yeah. Well, as of in like a week, like starting after Labor Day, I'm gonna have a new job. Yeah, it's sort of like a career shift. So, it's what I've been looking to get ever since I moved here, which I'm really excited about. For those of you who don't know, I do guitar repair, and I have for a number of years, and it's kind of like my passion and sort of what I'm into. I think I mentioned it a little bit in our Knockoff McLaren interview.
Yeah.
And, it can be a tough profession to get into because a lot of people who do it are kind of keep the cards close to their chest. They don't like to help other people or do a lot of, there's community, but not necessarily all the time a lot of opportunity, because a lot of people who do this kind of repair don't necessarily share the wealth, if you will.
Sure.
But I had an opportunity to work for a very, very reputable and exciting shop that has just continued to grow over the past few years. And so they needed somebody full-time to do guitar repairs on all of their instrument stock. So I'm really excited. I get to work with a luthier and improve my own skills and do all of that. And so while I'm kind of working out my last 2 weeks for my other job, I'm also doing a comic right now. And I thankfully got a new tablet that works better, but it's still just a lot of crunch, a lot of hurry up and wait sort of stuff going on, which is not ideal. But
I feel
you know
that.
what? It's creative. I get paid to do it, so
Yeah.
might as well just get through it. But
Yeah.
What's going on in the life of Idris?
Of
What
Sadhu-san?
has happened? Yeah.
Well, real quick, I was gonna say Gabe is definitely the luthier Vandross of our friend group. He really lets us know when he's here, and now
Oh my love,
that he is.
1,000 kisses from you is never too much. I just don't wanna stop.
Never too
Or what
much,
was
never
the-
too much, never too
Never
much,
too
never
much.
too much.
What's the other one he does that here
Here
and now?
now. Ooh, doo,
I promise
to
to love is for free. Classic love songs and a compilation.
Yeah, what's that? What was the album with yes, with Michael Bolton. Let's go.
Have I told you lately that I
Love you.
Timeless classics. Timeless love songs. And it's just like a beach scene, like what's behind me,
Yes.
people walking hand in hand, and it scrolls
Yes.
all the song. If you are
Man.
between the ages of, like, I would say at least the ages of maybe 26 to like
39. Yeah.
39.
Yeah.
You have
know that
spent
commercial.
a late night
Yeah.
like on the couch, and that commercial has come on
Here
on
and
television.
now. Doo-doo-doo. I promise to love faithfully.
Oh, man.
Man.
Oh my gosh! It also had Celine Dion. What was the Celine Dion song? It was.
I don't remember. I don't remember.
Oh man, we'll just have to post it. We'll just have to post the commercial. I usually see it come up every once in a while. There's always those like 90s nostalgia pages. And what's funny about those is a lot of stuff that's in there is not even 90s nostalgia. It's like 80s nostalgia that they're claiming is 90s nostalgia.
80s nostalgia or early 2000s nostalgia.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's kind of in that boat, but at the same time, like, it's not 90s technically, So
Man, you gotta love those old commercials. I saw one last night that just completely unlocked a memory for me. You remember the hover disc?
The hover disc. What? The hover disc.
It was like
real quick.
it was this big like UFO shaped thing that was made out of like material designed by NASA, and like
oh, this piece of trash toy.
It does tricks. It flips. It'll
Yeah.
amaze your friends. And I'm just like, I have one of those.
Yeah. No.
And I definitely remember the sensation of throwing it. And the thing is it's interesting for about 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, oh, I gotta run over there and get it.
Yep. You're like, it doesn't come back.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it doesn't come back.
Man.
Yeah,
Man, what
the toys
past.
that they marketed to us as kids, like
Yeah.
we don't see toys getting marketed to us. But although we're not watching network television, but even still, like I'm not seeing any commercials on like YouTube for toys or anything like that. I mean, who knows?
True.
Maybe
Well,
it's because I'm not a kid.
I was gonna say, yeah, you aren't getting the ads for that. I will say peak marketing for toys that I remember. It's probably Fushigi when we were a little older. Do you remember Fushigi? We're like the guy, like contact juggling. It's like Fushigi, it defies gravity. Like,
that was the one that always creeped me out when it was just the guy's hand just doing this.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is he doing?
Yeah.
That is really, really inappropriate. It also reminds me of remember in Labyrinth where the guy uses his hand in front of David Bowie to do the crystal ball movement things, and he's like spinning them in his hand. You remember that?
I haven't
This
seen
is
the
all
movie.
Mystic Orb training. That's
Of course. Yeah.
So,
You just all you're missing is a Fushigi.
wait a minute. Did you say you haven't seen Labyrinth?
I haven't seen Labyrinth. No.
Dude,
I know. I've heard a lot about it. There's just so much media to consume.
do yourself a favor, man.
And pick.
If you guys have not seen it, please 100% do. I've been watching stuff with Lauren recently. We watched both Batman and Batman Returns, so Batman 89 and Batman Returns. Classic.
Yeah.
Classic movies.
Classic
Got that
movies.
feel.
Absolutely.
Well, speaking of silly things though,
Time to talk about silly season, our wacky
Silly
wavy
season.
inflatable.
or the lack thereof. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been this silly season has been a lot of just
It's just
none of the wacky waviness.
he's the corporate professional wacky wacky. Or just
I need a 401k.
we are having a sale. It is here.
Please come. The team has worked so hard this quarter. Here's a pizza party.
It doesn't even have its hands up. It's like its hands are just sewed to its side, and it's just like kind of swaying gently.
Yeah.
That's basically what this silly season is. It is not wacky and inflatable. It is just like kind of standing there.
Yeah.
There hasn't really been a whole lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I was gonna say before we hop into the things that have popped up this silly season, what is the wildest silly season that you can recall?
I think the biggest shocker that I remember is actually when Hamilton moved from McLaren to Mercedes, because everyone thought he was nuts. And
they saw that.
I
and they
remember
said,
at the time. Well, the thing is, it's like at the time, like McLaren was still in that era where they were at least winning like 1 or 2 races a season.
Yeah.
So this was like in the midst of like the Red Bull dominance with Vettel. So like even when that was happening, you still had like Jenson Button won in Canada and Hamilton won in England, and like he was still winning with McLaren, and McLaren was not looked at as like this this team that was on the down turn. They still were considered very much contenders.
Sure.
But he decided to go with Mercedes because Mercedes went. I think McLaren lost the Mercedes spa driver, they lost the Mercedes engines. They switched over.
Right.
And Michael Schumacher was retiring for a second time, and so it was all the speculation: who is Michael going to be replaced by? And one goat. Was being replaced with another goat. And I remember at the time thinking, from a branding perspective and from a strategic perspective, I'm like, I respected this, because I'm just like, it just feels right. At the time, it felt right.
Yeah.
And then history proved that was that will probably go down as being one of the smartest
absolutely
driver moves in
absolutely.
F1 history. maybe right behind, Michael Schumacher going to Ferrari, even though that didn't really happen, didn't really bore any fruit for several years, but once it did, it was unstoppable.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, that's really the only one I can think of that really sticks out in my brain. I mean, the weird thing is a lot of the big driver shakeups that were really controversial didn't happen during silly season. They happened like mid season, like Kvyat getting kicked out and Max, Max stepping in, Max being replacing Jean-Eric Verne, and then being just dropped right in after Kvyat.
Yeah.
And I remember Vettel leaving for Ferrari was kind of controversial too, but like it was sort of romanticized because, Schumacher was his hero. And so he had this idea of like trying to bring Ferrari back to its winning ways, which is like Ferrari bungled that one. So, so yeah, I don't know. What can you think of anyone specifically that you remember being particularly hot?
Well, actually, now that I'm glad you mentioned that it wasn't during the silly season, because I think that holds true most of the time. Silly season is just a time of rumors and some minor moves across the board. But the big driver shakeup that I recall was when Rosberg was just like, I'm done. Like literally the day after he won the championship, he's like, I'm good.
I thought it was fake.
Yeah, I was like, there's no way he's leaving. Yeah, and then it's all confirmed. You're just like, whoa. Like Toto didn't even know, right? Toto apparently was very shocked that he was just like, whoa, really? Okay. All right.
And I mean, well, what's funny about that? At the time, at least I can remember, Bottas was in a similar sort of position reputation-wise that Alex Albon is in now. And I think he was also driving for Williams at that time.
He was driving really well for Williams. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was before Williams really hit the pits. You know what I mean? Like there were a few years there where he was like, ooh.
Yeah, I mean they went from like Pastor Maldonado, and then Massa showed up, and I was like, yeah, that's a good move. And they had they were doing better with Massa in the car, but then after he left, it was like there wasn't really much of anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was gonna say I definitely think that Albon is in that sort of similar trajectory at the moment where kind of like how Perez was in the pink Mercedes, where it's just he's doing stuff that people are really surprised by and proving his capability.
Oh, absolutely. And well deserved too, right? I mean, this guy has completely turned around his reputation as far as being a driver who can get into any piece of machinery and make it work, right? He is eking everything out of that Williams right now, right?
Right.
And the funny thing is, I love, the F1 Instagram account has been, I don't know who's doing this. It's kind of savage, actually. They're posting side by side stat comparisons of the drivers on each of the teams next to each other, right? And like it's like, oh, like Lewis versus George from Mercedes, and then like they have the eye emoji, right? Like the side eye emoji, just for the comment, right? And it's just showing the stats, and then you're like, okay, yeah, I can see it between these two. Lance and Fernando, come on, like no, you're not kidding anyone. K-Mag and Hulk, you're not sure, right? And then it gets to Albon and Sargent, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like the way Albon is just like, the way Albon is just like mopping the floor with Sargent. And no, it's not a direct competition between the two, and I know that Sargent is a rookie. He is in his first season. But Albon is this looks like a Fernando and Stroll type situation. You know what I mean? Speaking of which, I thought that was really hilarious that there was an article just this last week where the quote from Stroll was, "Fernando is much quicker than me, and I need to figure out how to speed up," or something like that.
Hey, pal. It's okay. We've known.
Oh my God.
We know.
Yeah,
we've known for a while that this is. We've known for a while that this is the case. It'll be okay. You'll figure it out. Hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like saying, man, Usain Bolt is a lot faster of a runner than me. I gotta figure out how to run faster. You know what I mean? That's what that feels like to me hearing that statement. I'm like, yeah, man, like, yeah, Well, speaking of Fernando Alonso, I did see a little snippets of an interview he gave, where they're asking him about his like career,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they asked him like if he had any regrets or anything like that, and I think the one thing that he said is that he had wished that he had enjoyed and appreciated like the good times more than he
Mm.
did, which I think is sad, but at the same time, like, he said he feels as though when he looks back on his career, he will, be happy and be, um, proud of of everything he's accomplished and all of his experiences. But
Mm.
it is a little frustrating considering that like he came so close with Ferrari in like 2011 and 2012,
Mm-hmm.
and to just have that rug pulled out from underneath him.
Yeah.
I mean, that probably would have been the best opportunity that he had had, at least up until this point,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that Aston Martin is definitely a winning outfit. And I think that they, provided that Alonso keeps winning for them and they give him a car that's capable of winning,
Yeah.
um, I think that he has the potential to win a few more races before he retires.
Yeah.
And especially if like I think what's going to happen is I think if Fernando is going to stay until he's going to try and stay until the regulation changes in 26. But even then, like, he might say I want a little taste of those cars.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? We'll see
Yeah.
what happens. I mean, we can't speculate too much
He's like,
because it can always change.
he's like, I can quit anytime, man. I just want. I see. I try it again.
I just need a little taste, man. um, but anyway, switching back to Albon,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I guess he's just, I guess a lot of, as I say, everybody except for McLaren has at least one seat potentially open,
Yeah.
as of right now. Which is weird just to think about because like I can't imagine McLaren dropping George, or Hamilton.
Yeah.
Um, and unless Ferrari pulls a Ferrari and just like dumps everybody, I imagine they're gonna give Charles an extension. So I don't know what if you based on how Alex Albon is doing and based on kind of the performance of the drivers that are currently in the grid right now, where do you think he could be most effective if he were to move for next season? Like, what drivers would you think he would do better in that respective car?
Okay. I think I would love to see Albon in the Aston Martin that Stroll is not able to eke the performance out of. I think he would actually do a fantastic job in that car.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, I wanted to say McLaren, but the problem with the McLaren is that even though there's been a nice performance boost over the last few races, um, all of those issues they've had as far as the touchiness of the car when it comes to the front end are probably
Mm-hmm.
still there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would assume, right? Unless it's like a major suspension change that you're making, because I think that's where a lot of that issue is going to come from, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that kind of sounds similar to the Red Bull, right? And I'm just thinking about how he performed in the Red Bull, right? And he might do well in a car that's more similar as far as like the design philosophy goes, as far as the Williams is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when looking at something like the Aston Martin, right? So I could see Albon doing well in a car like a Mercedes, like an Aston Martin, maybe like a McLaren. That I think I kind of see him staying within that kind of family of cars. I
Mm-hmm.
think he would also thrive in those environments too, where they
Mm-hmm.
seem to really foster, nurture
Yeah.
like the development of the racing driver, with the car and with the team. So I think I could see Albon doing really well with those teams. How about you?
Well, I was reading this article about sort of the position that he's in, and
Yeah,
I guess there
it's a weird
were
one.
there were apparently a couple of teams that were already considering taking him on, mainly Haas and
Mm,
Alpine, especially after Alpine had the Fernando Alonso,
yeah,
Oscar Piastri thing happening.
yeah,
Um, and the thing is Albon has a he's got a tricky decision to make because apparently he could go into another. He could switch over to another team, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what if this is what if it could be a Lewis Hamilton switching to Mercedes situation,
Yeah.
but it could also be the reverse.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like it could be a Danny Ricciardo, where like
Yep.
Danny Ricciardo was
Yeah.
with Renault. They built the whole team around him, and then he left and just fell on his face.
Yeah.
I think that apparently Williams has said that they have a plan. They're saying they're going to be up at the sharp end of the grid in they said that about 6 or 7 years. Which
Yeah.
here's the thing I'm going to say about that. As we've seen from Red Bull, all it takes is for a couple of teams in the top to just completely fail in designing their car, and then all of a sudden those years go up a couple.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like Williams could be on a building, thing,
A good
but
trajectory.
a good trajectory, but what's gonna accelerate that trajectory is if other teams fail to
Yep.
perform.
Yep.
And so there's that gamble, like, and the thing is that right now he is in a leadership role with Williams.
Mm-hmm.
He's currently building things with them. I think they're happy with him. I think
Yeah.
they're happy with him in the car.
Yeah.
He's obviously showing that like the car is capable of performing. He's showing his own skill set.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think that as much as I think he could perform in another car, if I was Alexander Albon, I would be kind of just, I don't know, I might just count my blessings and just
Stay with Williams. Yeah.
work with Williams and build something, because I think, and to a certain extent, like as romantic as it is the idea of going to like Ferrari or something,
Yeah. Oh no.
I think there's something to be said
No.
about staying where you're at and building a team that really cares to have you there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That wants to have you there.
Yep. Because
It's like, yeah.
because like, let me just say it real quick, like with what you're saying, absolutely, because when you do eventually win, it's that much sweeter, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You will be responsible for bringing Williams back into the limelight, in a sense. I mean, not, single-handedly, but
Yeah.
obviously you will have been a giant piece in that puzzle. And that's exactly why Vettel went to Ferrari. He was trying to do that with Ferrari. And the thing is, Williams is kind of a smaller outfit right now, that are still trying to rebuild. And so I think that there's something about that story that feels very romanticized to me. But I also feel like he just fits better.
Yeah.
I like Ferrari. I think unless you're like I honestly feel like Max would probably, if Ferrari had a quick car, Max would probably actually be a decent fit, because he's just kind of cutthroat and he's just like, I don't care. Like, I'm just going to drive that car and I'm going to drive fast and I'm not listening to anybody.
Yeah.
And like, the Tifosi, they love that, that sort of fiery passion from their drivers, And so, but yeah, I think if I was Alex Albon, I would probably stay put.
Oh,
because in 6 or 7
Agreed.
years, he's going to be 32, 33 apparently. And, that's not old, but like in F1 terms, like that's kind of, you're in the
You're
autumn
reaching.
of your career,
Yeah.
And it's very weird to hear that. And then think about these IndyCar drivers who are like in their 40s, close to their 50s, and they're still like winning stuff. It's like, it's weird how in F1, like that's the concern. But like in IndyCar, it's like if you're an older driver, it's kind of like, oh, he's a seasoned veteran.
Yeah.
He's going to be way better than you.
He's seen it all. He's seen it all. Yeah.
Seen it all. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, if you were in Albon's position, what would you do? Like, would you do the same?
Oh, 100%. I would stay at Williams. Like, this is a team that wants you. This is a team that's treated you really well. And this is a team that has, I think, really good management and leadership in James Vols. Vols. Sorry, I believe it's pronounced Vols.
Vowels.
Yeah, Vols. Yeah. Hooked on phonics.
Hooked on phonics works for me.
Yeah, so he's in a good spot being there. I don't think he needs to go to any other team. Again, I did mention Aston Martin, but Aston Martin might be a pressure cooker if he ends up, if he were to take Lance's seat. You know what I mean? If Lance's seat ever becomes available, But I think he's on a good team. Williams, great.
Yeah.
Viva la Williams.
Viva la Williams. Well, speaking of Max, I think we should talk about some of the interviews that he's given, and sort of like kind of his standpoint right now. he apparently in an interview was hinting at the idea of retiring sooner than his contract is up for. Um, he basically said, and I quote, "I don't see myself spending 3 years in the midfield. I'd rather stay home or do something else. But again, I don't see that happening." And that's a reference to Red Bull basically not delivering a race winning car after 2026.
Hmm.
Um, and hey, he can do what he's going to do. I mean, Max has already won 2 championships. That's more than lots of drivers. It's like one of those exclusive clubs. Once you're in the like 2 and 3 club, like you're like a, it's like legendary.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's like we talked to Elizabeth a little bit about, is he going to do NASCAR trucks? Like, he's going to stay home. But like, do you feel like a part of this is like, do you feel that a part of this is just his personality, or do you think that he's afraid of not being fast again? Because that's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like somebody who, like, now that he has that speed and success, like it's like he's scared of being like looked at as like a has-been, and he'd rather finish on top, if you will. You know what I mean?
I mean, I can understand that, but I think it's also a thing of like being challenged and wanting to try different things out. I mean, Max has said in a lot of interviews that he doesn't want to race until he's like, in his 40s and whatnot, right? So I think for him, he, maintains a certain level of success and gets all the accolades he wants, and then he can switch it up and go do something else, right? Like, he's like, I think he wants to have a family and everything, right? So,
Sure.
And at a younger age. And I think for him, I think whenever I hear these kinds of things, I don't think it's necessarily him like wanting to not like continue racing because he's like, oh, if I'm not first and I'm last, Ricky Bobby, I'm getting out of here. You know what I mean? I think it's legitimate. It would just be like a change of scenery for him, right? I mean, you got to think about this guy. I think most of us, and if you haven't, well, let me finish my thought. I do this a lot. Most of us have some level of understanding about some of the facts that have happened, certain things that happened when he was a child, right? With how he was raised, right? This guy's been racing like in some capacity since he was like 4 or 5 years old, right?
Yeah.
And I would imagine that being in that constant race mode, pressure cooker type environment that was created when he's being raised by his father, Jos Verstappen, would be a lot, right? And then to finally get to a point in your life where you're like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I can do whatever the hell else I want to do. He can do that. He's his own man. For those of you that aren't familiar, there's lots of articles out there, lots of videos out there of the stories Max has, revealed himself of how he was raised by his father, right? Like there's a video on YouTube called 5 minutes of Max Verstappen just trauma dumping, right? Or something along those lines, right?
Subtly trauma dumping.
Yeah. And it's like crazy, like what this guy went through, right? Like it is not normal, right?
Yeah.
Not normal. Yeah. And I would say, Max is successful in spite of everything that happened to him when he was a kid, I think maybe that's an element of it too, where he's just like, I finally have the ability to just say I'm done, like for him, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's say he wins this year and 2024, 25, and 26, right? That's 4 years. So then that means he's going to have 6 titles. I mean, at that point, if he wants to just hang it up, that's awesome, right? Like you are in the history books. Like you are considered to be one of the best F1 drivers of all time, if not the best, right? So I can see where he's coming from.
Yeah, I can as well. I mean, I've known people who, were pressured into doing something.
Yeah.
Because their parents wanted them to do it. And it's not that they didn't want to do it. It's just that they didn't want to do it to such an extent that they lost a chunk of their childhood to it. Which, I mean, some could argue is the price you pay for success in a motorsport. But I don't necessarily believe that that's true. Especially considering you look at somebody like Lena Buller, who started in karts when she was 17 and then made her way onto the F1 Academy grid at 25.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there's some room to sort of negotiate that. And I could imagine if Max is the kind of person where it's like, I did my piece and I don't need to be pushed anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, he could do that now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He has 2 world champions. That's 2 more than his dad has.
Mm-hmm.
And he can just be like, you know what? Like,
snap.
oh, snap. But I mean, for real, like he could hang it up. Not that I'm saying I want him to, because like I'm gonna want him to do what's happy for him.
Mm-hmm.
But he could hang it up now, and he could be completely satisfied with the way that his career has gone, despite the controversy of 2021 and all of that.
Yeah.
He could still just hang up the towel and just be like, hey, I put out a really good career. I did everything that I could do. And I'm happy with that. I mean, that's exactly what Rosberg did. Speaking of Rosberg.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a family. He got 1 championship like his dad, and he's like, you know what? I'm done.
Right.
I'm retired. That's it. That's all I wanted. I just wanted to be able to prove to myself that I could.
Right.
That I could beat Hamilton on his best day.
Mm-hmm.
And he did. And he won. So
and think about it too, right? Like for him to, like the Rosberg example, right? For him to have won in 2016, like I can't imagine what kind of sacrifice he had to make, right? Like mentally, like the energy that you put towards it, right? Like the time away from his family and daughter. Yeah, like that's. I would wager he probably asked himself after he won, he was like, okay, do I have what it takes to do this again next year? And then he looks at his family and he's like, you know what? It's not worth it to me because I have them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that was probably the calculus for him.
Yeah. I would say there's people like Lewis Hamilton where that's probably not a priority for him right now. I mean, he doesn't have a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't even know who he's dating. Like, they don't even know. It's all speculative.
Everyone's like, Shakira? And everyone's like, I
don't know. So who knows? Like, maybe it's just some random person that he met in Ibiza or whatever. Or like, I think for him, it's like, it's not a priority for him. So for him, the priority is still this sport. And then I know that like after the sport, we kind of know like Hamilton is going to be still active in motorsport generally. I can imagine him continuing to running his Extreme E team and do things like that. And sort of, I can imagine him and Vettel partnering as like a group of, like making like a company to try and, push for inclusivity, diversity, and, environmental consciousness in motorsport. And that would be wonderful. And those are the 2 best guys I could imagine doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who knows what Max will decide, but we at least know that he's not going to be deciding it for at least another like 2 or 3 years. So, it could be the Max show continuing forward.
Yes.
Time will tell. But
real quick, I got to say too, since we're talking about Red Bull, I love how we assume that it will be the Max show, and we're probably not wrong in saying that, because you know what's wild about this season so far is the fact that this is really the Max show, right?
Yeah.
Everyone thought it would be about like Red Bull, like, Checo versus
1,
Max.
2, yeah.
Yeah. But like, what blows me away is that Max and Sergio are driving the exact same car, right? Maybe their setup balances are different. Sure, whatever. Maybe Checo's just like, oh, give me the same thing as Max. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like, it's like night and day between their performances.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah. I've heard rumors going both ways. I mean, I've heard some people say they're the same car. I've heard some people say that Max's is set up completely different from Checo's,
which would be
and like
wild
to almost feel like in a completely different vehicle, basically. I think gone are the days where it's really obvious that differences are there. Like clearly we're doing the same wig and the wing and the same front wing and all of that bits. It's something else to do. It's whatever it is, it's internal. But here's the other thing. I think that Sergio is also affected mentally. What?
Oh, I was going to say, is this a hot fajita moment?
Oh, no. This is not hot at all. Okay. This is ice cold. Everybody knows that Helmut Marko is just like mentally torturing Perez at every turn that he can. And I think that has a very significant element to it.
Sure.
And also particularly after the weirdness that they had last year between Max and Sergio.
Yeah.
I would be willing to bet that Red Bull may have secretly threatened him or something with retribution had he, tried to, pull similar stunts with Max this year. So there could be a psychological element to this as well. Which I think it really, honestly, I feel like, say what you will with Ferrari. If you were to give me an opportunity of would you rather deal with failure and sort of just sadness, or would you deal with mental abuse from Red Bull? It's Ferrari or Red Bull. I would go with Ferrari, honestly. I'll deal with the sadness and they can take thirst trap pics of me and stuff. That's fine. But I would not want to subject myself to the Red Bull literal mental abuse that you get. That's happening, I feel that, from Helmut Marko. It's not worth it to me. You know what I mean? Yeah. But there's a good question.
Yeah.
Which team out of all the teams do you think is the most mentally healthy? Which one do you think has the most fun-loving environment? Who do you think? What team is what would be the Trader Joe's crew of the F1 team where there's everybody loves being there and it's just they ding ding ding, they ring the bell.
That is a good question.
We'll have to make a poll for the viewers or listeners.
If you had asked me a few years ago, I would have told you Force India. Before they became Racing Point. There was one season
even during their administration period and stuff where they were forced into administration.
No, well, that's a good point.
I was gonna say, man, I don't know about you, but I just remember there being some wild stuff going on. I mean, their leader was being he might have been throwing parties, but he was getting arrested for tax fraud.
That's true. That's true. Vijay Mallya, right?
Vijay Mallya, yeah.
Okay, actually, I take that back. I rescind my previous answer.
Okay.
And I will submit a new answer of I think I want to say Mercedes back in the day. Of a few years ago, it just seemed real, sure. It's big mega corpo, but they seem to respect your time off and it's 5:01. Hey, sorry, we can't call Hans. It's his day off. It's his daughter's birthday party, but as soon as 8 a.m. comes around,
Well, and the same with Lewis being there and being making this an environment that's more inclusive to people and things of that nature. I would say right now in the current grid, I would actually say Sauber, Alfa Romeo. Because why? It's not because they're doing anything that's particularly fun and happy and blah blah blah. They're just kind of in a quiet zone. They're just kind of there. They're doing their thing. Nobody's talking about Alfa Romeo. Nobody's saying, "Oh, I this sounds terrible." But I forget that Zhou Guanyu's on the grid half the time. Because literally they don't talk about him. They don't talk about the guy. He's sort of on the social media, not as much as Bottas is. He was just in Colorado for a bike race, dressed up as the Duff Man from Simpsons with beers in his a fake muscle suit. I'm that guy the camera is glued to him.
I mean, more his buns than anything else. But
yes. But I mean, if you've got Valtteri Bottas buns, you're gonna want them people glued to him. If we're being honest here, I saw there was a post where just I think it was Motorsport or F1.com or something. It was just don't worry. They said something don't worry. It's just the rear this time or something. And I'm just are people really concerned that they're only seeing the rear end? I mean, I know there's people out there, they want to see the whole thing. So the
whole thing, you know what I mean?
They want to see the whole thing. Dun, 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 dun. They want to see it all. Because
do you remember that song? She had me singing Toya, 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 Toya.
Oh, God. Oh, let us not relive those times. But anyway, I think that just for the sake of the fact that they're just kind of there and they're not making a lot of noise and they're just trying to do the job, I feel that seemed like a pretty laid back, because if you have success, it's yay, but if you don't, it's it's okay, it's just alpha, so.
And who doesn't have the most chill environment right now? It's got to be Haas, right? They're concerned,
well.
like they're concerned about hygiene all the time, but also like they are constantly like under watch with the whole Haas automation issue going on right now, right? Because at the start of the Russian-Ukraine war, I think it was alleged that Haas was shipping over or was producing. I think their machines were being used by someone who was producing parts that would go over to Russia, right? And that is, you can't do that during wartime, right? Like that no. So I don't, from what I understand, Haas did not actually sell those machines, to like, I think to the offending party after the conflict had started. I think it was a prior issue. And so I think they're just going through like a, checking the books kind of process right now, but still that's got to be very stressful to be going through that, right?
I mean,
like,
dude,
yeah,
their sponsor was Uralkali. Like, I'm sure they were just like, oh yeah, we'll sell our automated things to your Russian friends. It's cool. Like, they had, I mean, it would be like, I mean, I'm not going to speculate, but I would say like if it was prior to that, like I could imagine like if Haas is like, a relationship with, a company that's got like a guy in a company that's got close ties with like Putin, if they're going to take that road, they might not. They're like, well, at that time, like, it's Russia, but like, it's not the greatest, but like, at least they're not in a war. And then all of a sudden the next day they read the papers and like, oh, damn it. You know what I mean? Like, I at least give Haas credit for backing out of that sponsorship, like immediately without question. And then firing Nikita Mazepin, which is, I mean, honestly, good riddance. But that's I would say Haas is definitely in a weird place right now because
always in a
they're
weird place.
Definitely trying to do some marketing healing. I wouldn't be surprised if they made Nico Hulkenberg bleach his hair blonde because like the minute the Barbie fever died down, he just went right back to not having it. I don't think he's got it anymore. I think he's back to brown. Which is also weird too because it's like, dude, you had all these comments about driving a pink car and stuff like that, and like pink being a problem for you. Like I don't get your deal. And then they do like now they have the Chipotle sponsorship and stuff like that, and it's like I think they're trying to make they're trying to heal up a little bit. And I have heard in the news recently that speaking of Alfa Romeo, they're apparently going to might be partnering Haas in 26.
Which would be an interesting pairing. So was this as far as just like title sponsor? Or what? Or is this like a? This won't be a team merger, right? I mean, because no, Sauber's still gonna be Sauber because it's Alfa Romeo Sauber, but Sauber owns the Alfa Romeo team and like the rights, right? Alfa Romeo is just the current title sponsor of
and
Sauber.
in 26 they're gonna be Audi. It's gonna be Audi Sauber.
Yeah, so then Alfa Romeo would be going with Haas. I mean, honestly. Yeah, I mean, that's a way more legit partnership than anything else they've had previously, right?
Yeah.
That's a whole lot better than Rich Energy.
Yeah, if they partner with Alfa Romeo and they get some success, they will literally be showing some Rich Energy.
Yeah.
If we're being honest. Boom. Yeah. I think it's, from a romanticized part of me, I like the idea of still having Alfa Romeo on the grid. I like seeing all these old teams come back, or old names return to the grid.
It wouldn't be super American though, Alfa Romeo Haas.
No, but I mean, Alfa Romeo is it's definitely a lifestyle. It's definitely like a kind of there's sort of like a lifestyle brand-ish. It's like they're kind of like Ferrari adjacent to, even though Ferrari owns Alfa Romeo at this point, but the Alfa Romeo is like sort of like a it's sort of like you have your standard Modelo Especial, and then you have like the Modelo Especial Noir or something, you know what I mean? Where it's just like slightly classier. It's like that's why like Ferrari races in like red, like Ferrari racing red, and Alfa Romeo is like dark, dark red. It's like a dark maroon red.
Yeah.
It's like there's a little bit more classy, in that sense.
It's kind of like a Di Serono versus a Di Serono rocks.
Di Serono. I'm going to show you how to make Di Serono on the rocks. First, the glass, then the rocks, then Di Serono. Di Serono on the rocks. Thanks. Wow, learning how to mix drinks. Um,
That was another commercial that was hot back in the, I think it was like mid 2000s.
yeah, well, they had that, and they had Di Serono with a twist, and it's just
Yeah.
like I mean, even if you're not a drinker, like a twist, it's like yeah, it's lemon. That's all it is. Like I
Di
love those
Serono
commercials, man.
with a twist.
It's just like we're gonna do an instructional video about how to make these mixed drinks, and it's just Di Serono on ice. Like okay, anyway. They should sponsor Haas at this point. Di Serono Alfa Romeo Haas.
Oh, Hajin, we have Di Serono.
We have Di Serono.
First, you take below average F1 car. Then you take Di Serono. Di Serono on below average F1 car.
First, you take a Haas F1 car. Then you take Di Serono. You pour it all over car. Di Serono on F1 car.
Then you light it on fire.
Look, it's going faster. The driver has to escape fire. Yeah, well, who knows if that partnership is actually going to work out, but I agree with you.
We'll
That
see.
is definitely a way more legitimate sponsorship
Absolutely.
for Haas than well,
Yeah.
I mean, Chipotle's pretty legit, but
Chipotle's
they're
legit.
not a title. They're not a
Yeah.
title sponsor.
Yeah.
So that's the big thing.
Speaking of legit things, we got to talk about this Felipe Massa lawsuit.
Yeah, surprising that that's legit, right?
Yeah.
Like you thought, like, oh, he's just a no. He actually is like pursuing some legal action.
Yeah.
Or, like they sent a letter, and I'm like, ooh.
And honestly, like okay, so you mind giving the fans, the listeners, just a quick primer on that, and then we can, or
Okay.
primer. That's primer's the English, the American English way to say it. Primer is the English way, the English way, the blimey way.
Yeah, primer's what you put on your walls. So basically, in 2008, there was a very, very tight championship battle between Lewis Hamilton and Felipe Massa. The first night race in F1's history, it was also the first race at Singapore, was on in 2008. And at this point, the battle was really tight between both Hamilton and Massa. But in the midst of all of that, Renault had taken Fernando Alonso back after his spell with Aaron, and he was driving with Nelson Piquet Jr., was the second driver. Renault was on the verge of leaving the sport altogether because at that point in time, the economic crisis was going on. And so they didn't have any money, and it was just looked as too much of an expense. They didn't want to do it. But they had suggested that if Renault was managing to get a race win that season, then they would try sticking around. So essentially, Fabio, or what was it? What was the principal's name? Flavio
Briatore.
Briatore. Him and I think was it Pat? No, not Pat Simmons. There were two bigwigs in Renault, including the team principal, who essentially suggested in like internal meetings that if they were able to manufacture a win for Fernando or for one of their drivers, essentially by just finding the circumstances where there was manufacturing a safety car intervention by essentially pitting one of their drivers early, having the other driver spin out, which would force all of the other teams to pit apart from your driver who had pitted early, and would skyrocket them up to the top. Their opportunity came in Singapore, and apparently Nelson Piquet Jr. was in on this plot. He spun out. I forget what turn it was, but it was actually not the turn he had intended to. And he apparently spun too much, but it still worked. And so he spun out. Fernando Alonso had pitted early, and everybody was shocked. They're like, why did he pit so early? This is weird. And then Nelson Piquet Jr. spun out, and everybody else jumped into the pits because it's just what you do. Like, it was closer to the end of the race. You wanted to have as best chance as you can to win. You get on the fresh tires, it's a safety car intervention. It's a free pit stop. Well, Massa came into the pits, and Ferrari totally bungled his pit stop. He took off. They still had the fuel hose attached to the car, and so he had to stop. They had to back him up, take it off, and then send him out. He was effectively started last. Okay. Now, flash forward to the end of the season in Brazil. Hamilton passes Timo Glock on like the last lap, which made him have just enough points to beat Felipe Massa for the world championship, even though Felipe won the race. And Felipe thought he won the world championship for like that last lap, but like, no, like Hamilton passed. And so essentially what's happening now, Bernie Ecclestone gave an interview. And in this interview, he suggested that they knew that Renault were doing this. They knew that they did this wrongdoing at the time. And that they just, essentially like let it whatever happened, what's going to happen, going to play out. And so they just were like, whatever. And Felipe Massa heard that and was like, okay, so you knew this and you didn't do anything about it at the time. And so now this lawsuit is him essentially saying, had Renault been punished from that, had their race win been taken away, and had this not even occurred, I would have, he would have bumped up in the race stand. He would have had enough points basically to overcome the deficit to Hamilton and been able to actually win a world championship.
Right.
Which has a lot of moving parts to it. And it's a very, very sticky situation because on the one hand, you have, well, Ferrari, you would have been fine if Ferrari didn't bungle that pit stop.
Right.
So that's the one half of this.
So that's problem number one. Yeah.
That's the problem number one. The other problem is you don't know how the rest of that season would have played out had that happened too.
Right.
Like there's all like the people's mentality, your thought process could have changed. You know what I mean? There could have been different factors that had played into that. But essentially Felipe is I think his lawyers essentially want the FIA to essentially admit that he was the 2008 World Championship winner, and then give him compensate him financially for potential loss of money gained, which is very, very hard to figure out. It's a very nebulous thing. So
so here's the thing. I don't think you'll ever get the FIA to say, we messed up and you should have been the champion potentially, right? That could have, or that could have happened, right? It's kind of the similar thing with like 2021 where it, whatever intention Michael Massey had with like wanting to have more entertainment for the last lap, and then, only the cars between Hamilton and Verstappen can, unlap themselves, whereas no one else can. That's kind of a similar thing where if they ever wanted to revisit that, you can't just give the title to someone else, right? Like, first off, the person you're giving to is not going to accept it. They'll be like, no, I don't want that, right? And I don't think that's Massa's goal here. I think the goal is the financial restitution and compensation, right? Because that's massive. Imagine you win, right? You win a world championship in any sport. That opens up so many sponsorship deals for you, right? That, and in the article that we're referring to, it's in SB Nation. And in that article, they mentioned it could be up to tens of millions of euros, right? That's a lot of money. That's like generational wealth type money, right? And so if he potentially missed out on deals like that, right? Looking at what his peers were getting at that time, that's a lot of money. And I can understand him being really, really upset and heated about that. And I'm not a lawyer, but I hear that and I'm like, I can understand the logic there, So that's why we have smarter dudes, smarter folks who are capable of looking at the letter of the law in whatever countries that need to be examined, like as far as their legal frameworks are concerned, in order to figure out whether or not there's a real case here. But on surface level, I get it, I understand it, but hindsight's also always 20/20, right? Like just like you were saying, for him to say like, oh, if this had happened, the rest of the season would have played out this way too. Not necessarily, right? It could have, just like you said, it could have changed up mentalities, could have changed up approaches, all that sort of thing. Ferrari just bungled the pit stop too, like that. Yeah, that's a major thing, right? Yeah. So
it's like if you're, it's like if you're claiming like, oh well, these circumstances should have been different, but it's like, but you still screwed up. It's just
Right.
like if somebody gave you false information of where a treasure is buried, and told somebody, but just so they could tell their other friend the right answer, and then you showed up but you forgot your metal detector at home.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, even if they told you that where it was, like if they told you the right place where it was,
Yeah.
you still didn't bring your metal detector,
Right.
so you still wouldn't have found it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like it's like that weird kind of scenario where it's just like you can claim the one thing, but you also have to think there's a lot of factors involved.
Right.
And so I think that in reference to 2021, the FIA have admitted that the decision
Yeah.
that was made was essentially not the best decision.
Yeah.
And it was made for entertainment value or whatever.
Mhm.
But they still haven't tried to give, like, they're not going to give that title to Lewis.
Yeah.
Like, and Lewis
Yeah.
is not trying to pursue it.
You're right.
And so basically the precedent there has been set that the FIA doesn't change that.
Right.
Unless there's some really serious mitigating circumstances that
Right.
get affected. And if it was like a couple of years ago or a year ago, you could imagine.
Right.
But this was 2008, man.
Right.
This was a while ago.
Yeah.
So like I think that the best thing that Felipe could possibly hope for here is some financial restitution, and also just like, I mean, as far as his reputation gains, I don't really know if this is going to add to his reputation at all.
Yeah.
I mean, if anything, it's like if it was like if it was like the FIA had made a decision that they were going to give him money because of this, it's almost like when the Pope like makes concessions about the stuff that the Roman Catholic Church had done in the past that was like a no-go. It's like if it's freely given, then you're like, oh, okay, like that's, and maybe people would be like, oh yeah, like Massa, like he was like, oh, like he was taken from him, and like, it's he did, people would rally behind him a little bit more. But the fact that he's pursuing this himself, it's a little like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, but like, I don't know. I mean, it's a little wishy-washy.
I feel the man though. Like, go get your money.
Sure, yeah,
go get your money.
Yeah, but like as far as his reputation, like I don't think
Sure.
it's going to make him a more loved figure from history.
No,
you know
I
what
don't.
I mean?
Yeah.
So, but that's what it is. But, speaking of lawsuits, we should talk about another one that's kind of F1 adjacent in a way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's also really weird because it gives me Oscar Piastri flashbacks a little bit too. Not just because it also involves McLaren.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you want to give us the primer about this Alex Palou McLaren Chip
the Chip Ganassi
Ganassi
stuff.
Floyd Jr. Chip if you're Ganassi.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'll let you do this. I think you have the details on this one a bit more clear than I do. I just have the cliff notes on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, in a nutshell, essentially, Alex Palou, who right now is the Max Verstappen of IndyCar at the moment, he's been really, really cleaning up the field in IndyCar in many ways. He was contracted to switch to Arrow McLaren, which is the McLaren IndyCar team, in 2024, so next year. And he is currently racing for Chip Ganassi, and he's doing really well with Chip Ganassi. And he essentially has just said, "Yeah, no, I'm not doing that." And then McLaren's like, "We're very disappointed that he's not, And Chip Ganassi's like, "He's racing for us. What are you gonna do about it, punk?" Like they're getting kind of puffy chest a little bit with it, and saying he's racing for us. This is all wrong. And McLaren is just like, all right, well, we're just going to sue you for breach of contract.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I don't know what I mean. From Alex Palou's perspective, I can understand if you're winning with Chip Ganassi and they're setting you up for success in that way. You're going to want to stay with that team. So I get it. But also, like, if McLaren has you under contract and you're just like, yeah, I don't want to do that now. I mean, I don't know a lot about racing contracts, but like I know like this isn't, this isn't like it used to be in the 60s where you're just like hopping around to whoever wants to pay you to drive for that day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's like contracts and racing contracts are a little bit more complex than that. And there's just a lot of cattiness going on too. Like Chip Ganassi was just like, I used to respect the McLaren team, but this new
Yeah.
administration, I don't. You know,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, Chip, what are you doing? But yeah, so apparently Zach Brown is like getting involved here because obviously he, also kind of runs the Indy McLaren team as well. And there's this, thought that, he was going to be the guy that jumps into McLaren and replaces Lando Norris when Lando Norris is kicked, says no or, moves on to something else. Which I think is a pretty lofty ambition thinking in the future because I'd say that Lando Norris is very much relevant right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what to say. So like, let's see. I can read a little. It's observed from the.
And the other thing too, real quick, is just that Chip Ganassi Racing had to sue Alex Palou.
Yes,
for him to race. Like it's
so weird.
Messy. It's so messy.
It's so messy. Yeah. I mean, like he had a separate contract, outside of the deal with Indy to serve as a McLaren reserve driver,
right?
For the and and also like it's a separate contract from that and also the McLaren 2024 potential season. And they said that they had apparently already gave him like a down payment towards that. So my assumption is they're trying to sue him basically to give them a refund, for the deposit they put down on him.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very weird and it feels very catty. And I'm wondering if how much of this is like just driver talent being like, well, I'm the hot shit right now, so you know what, like you're gonna have to really woo me or whatever. It's like I heard there's a similar thing kind of going on with there's similar contract dispute going on in the world of basketball apparently, what I have found out with the Trailblazers, where like a basketball player wants to be traded.
Yeah.
And the team he wants to go with doesn't have any kind of trades
like cap space
that the teams are involved in. And so the guy is basically saying, well, fine, if I have to stay here, then I'm not going to bother playing. And the NBA had to step in and be like, no, you're going to play because if you don't play, then you're going to have to wait. You're going to basically not be allowed to play in the NBA until your contract for the Blazers is fulfilled, which is like 6 years, and like you're not getting any money for that. So like there's a weird thing where it's like there's no body that I think can step in here, like the FIA or like the governing body of IndyCar can't just like step in and be like, well, Alex, you gotta they can't do any finger wagging here. I think it's really between teams here.
Yeah you're mixing two loves I have here with NBA basketball. But yeah, that specific instance with Dame Lillard, and I hope that situation gets resolved. But as far as it goes for over here in the IndyCar world, it's messy. I don't know. Yeah, it's gonna have to play out in just like sports court effectively. Those do exist, so they can get that all rectified there. But the fact that they have to go to court over this kind of thing is really messy. And like looking through the article and some of the data that's out there or the research that's out there about everything that's going on, this is so convoluted. Like it seems like agreements were made for him to go to McLaren with his previous management team. I don't know, man. I'm not a contracts expert. But if he signed two contracts at the same time, with one pointing this way and the other going this way, you know what I mean? That's going to be real messy. And I don't think they'll figure it out, right? They're going to make some kind of restitution, whether it's like financial or maybe Palou actually does end up driving for McLaren or something. But yeah,
I think at this point, that's just not going to work.
Yeah.
I think at this point, that is not, I mean, yeah, it's just it's just too awkward of a situation. Yeah. It's kind of like if you wanted to sit at a certain table and then somebody took your seat and you were just like, oh, this is my seat, and they're just like, oh, I took it already. It's just like, well, yeah, but I really wanted it. It's like, all right, fine, you can have it. And it's just like, no, I don't want it now. Like now it's like
Yeah.
everybody around me, I already made a fuss, and like everybody's mad at me. It's gonna be really awkward.
Yeah.
It's just sort of like that. It's just this really, I can't imagine him going back to. I think the smartest thing for Alex Below, just stay with Chip Ganassi, and then just file the, just settle the lawsuit out of court. Just pay him whatever. And
do you think this will affect his reputation as far as other teams are concerned in the future, right? That if he, let's say he did sign multiple contracts at the same time that clearly had different conclusions, are people going to look at him and say, "Oh, he's trustworthy"? Or do you think this is just a case of just really like management just messing up with with contracts?
I think if anything, it's just going to be like whoever makes a contract for Alex Below is going to make it incredibly ironclad.
Yeah.
And be like, these are the terms, and then set conditions if the terms are not met.
Yeah.
Because you could probably say the same with Oscar Piastri, because I think whoever ends up goes through Piastri is probably going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of really top end drivers, if you if you're going to negotiate a contract with Fernando Alonso, you're going to have to pay a lot of money. And that's why I think that Daddy Warbucks really opened his wallet up for Fernando, which is why I think Fernando's really happy. Yeah. I think it's not just because of the money. I think it's because he has a good car.
Yeah.
And, I think Aston Martin's seems a little more fun than Alpine is right now, the French Ferrari. But yeah, we'll see how this plays out. I think there's a lot of bad blood, but I think that McLaren under Zach Brown is just they're a little litigious. You know what I mean? Like they're just they're just ready to. They're just like people in Florida. They're just ready to sue on a drop of a hat. No tea, no shade to people in Florida, but but even if you live in Florida, the people I'm talking about.
You think Sargent's gonna sue Williams for his race results this season so far?
I mean, maybe if he's got if he has like a super Karen aunt or something like that, that's just like, we're gonna sue.
You can't do that.
Well, anyway, kind of moving on, if I may. Apart from stuff that's maybe a little kind of weird and lawsuit related, there's a couple of things I do want to talk to you about that I've heard recently. And they're directly related to Formula One's future. One of them was David Crofty, who you will know as the
lights out and away we go guy.
Yes, the commentator, along with Martin
Blunder.
Awkward, Martin Blunder Brundle. He had an interview with Sky Sports where he talked about, they were asking him about the state of F1 currently, and one of he said some stuff that are really interesting, and I kind of have conflicting feelings because I agree and then I don't necessarily agree in the same time. One of the things that he was saying is that he doesn't believe that the FIA should be in charge of making the regulations and the rules, which I can sort of understand that, because at the one hand, I feel like F1 could benefit from opening up the regulations a little bit.
Sure.
I think that in some ways it's getting kind of stifled, because not only is it like, I think that once the cost cap has really started to be put into effect, I think opening up the regulations a little bit, I think would be healthy. You know what I mean? I think that so long as we know that there needs to be certain safety thresholds, there needs to be certain measurement thresholds, and there needs to be certain power difference thresholds, I think allowing the teams to sort of interpret those in different ways could be beneficial. So like if you have, instead of saying, well, everybody needs to have, V6 turbo hybrids that are like 1.6 liters. Yeah. They could say, okay, your engines can't be any more than 2 liters. And you need to have this amount of, like, it has to have like 0 emission output, and it can only be within a certain amount of horsepower. Then it's up to the teams, depending on how they want to deliver that power, whether they want to make a bigger engine and use lighter parts, or if they want to use, like a smaller engine that's a little lighter, but like, maybe has more bulkier bits. Like, things like that, where it's like you have that structure sort of there still, but then it's kind of more or less left to interpretation, I think could create
Mm-hmm.
interesting results, because you kind of had that back in the 80s, right?
Sure,
With
sure.
V12s and turbo V8s or whatever, or turbo V6s. So I think that could benefit. But the other thing that he said, and this is where I do agree, and I want to get
Mm-hmm.
your thought on this, because we've
Sure.
talked about the sprint race quite a few
Mm-hmm.
times, right? He said that he believes that the sprint race, he likes the sprint race, but he says he doesn't believe that it should be towards world championship points.
Hmm.
And at first when I heard him say that, I'm like, well, then what's it for? But then he said this other thing that I actually do agree with, and I think this is actually really good. He said the sprint race should be its own sort of like thing, because I guess in cricket there's like a main series and then like an
Mhm.
offshoot thing that like people do, the players will opt out of if they want to. And so the idea is you have your main Grand Prix and then you have your sprint races, but the sprint races are optional for particular
Yeah.
drivers and for teams. And so he had suggested this in the sense of, what if you put your reserve drivers in the sprint race
Hmm.
so that they had their own little, championship or their own little thing, to where they're not just sitting there doing nothing.
They get like actual experience.
Yes. The only thing that I could see being a problem with that is that it
Yeah.
would cost extra money, because you're not going to put them in a car for
Yep.
the Sunday race, because what
Yeah.
if they crash it and then all
Yeah.
of a sudden that compromises the Sunday race? So they would have to field basically a third car if
Yeah.
they're going to do that.
Right.
So there is some risk involved, but I do like the idea of the reserve drivers getting a chance to
Yeah.
race it out, because you could see Jamie Chadwick on a sprint race
Yes.
weekend
Yes, you
racing in a
could.
Williams, and that would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Yeah. I like the idea. You could also see Antonio Giovinazzi back on the grid for a little bit, right? I think he's reserve driver for Ferrari this season.
Is he now? Is he this season?
I thought, or maybe it might have been last season. I might be blurring together. Yeah, I get it. I see where he's coming from. I think he was also saying in the article too that he doesn't like the points counting towards the championship, right?
Right.
And that it should just kind of be its own thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, there just needs to be something different about the sprint races, right? We've talked about this previously. While it's good that there was an attempt at spicing things up, right, from the
Yeah.
FIA, as far as introducing sprint races, but
Yeah.
they're not working. Like I don't know, they're not really working. I don't think they're not doing the thing that they're supposed to do.
No.
So change it up again. Let's do something
Right.
different. And I think doing something like this, where you kind of separate it out, allow the reserve drivers more time, which I think is always a great thing to do, is fantastic. The feasibility of it, that's the problem, right?
It would definitely cost more money, I think.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of the reserve drivers getting a chance to
Yeah.
get out there and
Yeah.
race. Because, but also, hey, if you think of it this way, though, when the reserve drivers go out in a practice session,
Mm-hmm.
they're still kind of putting the car at risk. They
That's
could
true.
still potentially crash it. So I would say like that could be the way to look at it from that perspective as well.
Yeah.
Or
Or just make the sprint race a 5-car shootout or a 10-car shootout. Do something different.
Yeah. They should just
Don't be afraid.
it should just be a shootout with the top 10 or something like that. Have the sprint just be the top 10 duking out, or the bottom the bottom half, like have the bottom half do sprint race and
Yeah.
just let the top 10 wait till Sunday or something like
And-
that.
And no DRS. No DRS. Just
Oh
one
yeah, we
car
should
on the
talk about
track.
that.
Yeah.
We should talk about that. They have suggested banning DRS for qualify or no, they're suggesting banning it for the race, I think. So
Which
I've
race is
heard
this?
two things.
Okay. All right.
I've heard two things. Either banning it for the race
Mm-hmm.
so that like you use it for qualifying, but like in the race people just have to, use whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
Or reversing the rule for DRS usage, where instead of you having to be like instead of it being that you have to be within a second of somebody and then you could use the DRS, flipping it to where if you are within a second of somebody, you cannot use DRS. I don't know. I don't know. Like, I don't know about that. You know what I mean? Because I think that would still require them having to I think there's a little problem there because if you're just slightly behind somebody, you're not within a second, then you get DRS and you can use it. Unless if you within 1 second, then it shuts off.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like you're more or less just gonna prevent people from actually passing each other on track.
Yeah,
Instead of
overtaking.
and you're just gonna bunch the field a little closer, maybe.
Yeah.
I just think it should be on a time limit. I've said that before. That's what I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, time limit I think is the best way to do it. I was just mainly saying that just to be a stickler because I like just change it up. Just change up the rules. What's wrong with like changing it up for the rest of the season?
Yeah.
No one will really care. It's not going to affect things majorly, you know.
Yeah, I think
we talked about this in the episode with Elizabeth, right? Like the FIA is just so afraid to make big changes, you know.
Yeah.
Just change it up.
Yeah.
People will probably love you for it.
Yeah, no, I think, and I think that, it's more or less the problem that McLaren's having with cars not being able to pass each other. Period. I think is just like the DRS is not helping it. It's also not having it is also not going to solve the problem because the cars can't pass each other because nobody's taking enough of a risk. There's not enough variables in the place. It's like it's different. It's like weird. Like spec racing has that thing where it's like everybody's kind of on an even playing field, so it's just down to the driver.
Mm-hmm.
But then like if you also have it in Formula One stages where it's like the top teams are just so much faster than everybody else, but they're also not fast enough to pass each other, so everybody's just kind of a stalemate.
Yeah.
Like in either way. So it's weird. It's weird. But
the cost cap seems that's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I guess just to wrap things up a little bit, I don't know what the rest of your August looks like, Idris, but I am very excited to be going to the Portland Indy Grand Prix.
Yes.
And
so excited for you.
I have a little bit of news for you too, and this is going to be fun. I'm really excited about this. So, Lauren has been making friendship bracelets for the Jonas Brother concert.
Okay.
That's apparently a thing that they do. It's like a thing amongst the Jonas Brother fandom.
Mm-hmm.
And she has all these beads. And she's like, you know what? We should. Well, for one thing, she made us some F1 or F off bracelets.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, I left mine at her place, but I know where it is, so it's safe. But she made a few of those, and we'll certainly be making more for. I'll definitely make sure that I will make more if she does not make more. But she had this great idea.
Yeah.
Of making friendship bracelets for the IndyCar drivers. Because we're gonna be at the Paddock Pass.
And just give it to them?
Just put their name, their last name, their number, and then the color of the beads is like the color of their livery for their cars.
That's cool. That's so
cool. I asked Elizabeth, I'm just like, which driver do you think would accept a friendship bracelet? And she gave me a list. She confirmed my thought was Pato O'Ward seems like a person who would definitely take a friendship bracelet. We made one for Jamie Chadwick too, so hopefully we'll be able to see her and give her a friendship bracelet.
Yeah.
But she made them for everybody. She did a Scott Dixon one. She did a Will Power one. Yeah. And I guess the idea is that like they're so used to giving things to fans and like things of that nature that's always fun when they receive stuff too. Yeah. Like, and I think it's simple enough, just a little friendship bracelet.
Yeah.
And, cute or whatever.
Also, a little fun little memento.
Yeah. So I'm super stoked for that. I'm totally into it.
That is so cool.
But yeah, I also want to say, and I did not know this. I thought when I bought a Paddock Pass, I'm like, well, that's it. That's the cream of the crop. I got like the best thing possible. No.
Oh, it's not.
There's a thing called a pit pass, which lets you walk the track and like be in the pit lane. And I'm like, I was making it.
Close.
It's like a super VIP exclusive. Like they put it out like a year ahead of time, and like only a certain amount of people are allowed to like actually get a chance to buy it. Which apparently I will be eligible for next year because I bought the pit pass this year.
Paddock
Pass this year.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I was making jokes with Lauren because she has the pit passes with her and her dad.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, yep, have fun having breakfast with Will Power. That's cool. Like I'll just be in the side in a trash can.
Just being a pleb.
Just getting dunked on. But yeah, I'm really excited for it. I'm going to take a lot of pictures. They already posted the poster and T-shirt for the race, which looks really
Yes.
awesome. It has Multnomah Falls in the background. I'm absolutely love it. So I'm super excited for all of that.
Dude, that's gonna be so cool. Yeah, I remember back in California, I went to the Long Beach IndyCar race. I think 2 times I went. Really awesome event. Loved being there. So I know you'll have a good time because PR seems like a really really fun track.
Yeah, it is super fun. At some point, you're gonna have to be able to try and get a trip up here.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, we'll have a place for you to crash, and we'll be able to go because it's super fun track. It's a very scrappy track. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any other news you wanted to talk about? Any kind of things coming up you want to mention?
No, I think that's pretty much it. The only other thing I want to bring up is that I still think it's hilarious that apparently Ferrari reached out to Lewis. Like, like I could see Lewis just being like, you know the gif of the meme of the little girl who's just like looking like, and she's got like her teeth just
that's
like
nice.
But she's like,
oh yeah, that one. Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, or just Mariah Carey just going, I don't know her.
yeah, I don't.
You know. Yeah. 100%. Very awkward. You know, and like they're trying to apparently poach Alex Albon, and I'm just gonna
Don't, Alex, don't
do it. Alex,
don't do it.
This
Don't
is
do
your
it.
conscience speaking.
Don't do it, man.
Williams is a historical racing outfit. You can bring them back to winning ways.
I mean, Ferrari is as well, but Ferrari at this point is one of those Amazon lifestyle brands, you know, that you buy those earbuds, just lifestyle, diet. What are some of the other words they use there? It's always like lifestyle is always the one, and then exercise, fitness.
Yeah, clean life.
Yeah,
live,
clean life.
love,
Yeah,
laugh. Vacation life.
In that order.
Breathe, air, waterfall. Yeah. Yeah, you know, they will forever be a clothing merchandise brand that also sells cars and runs a race team. So
yeah, occasionally, they occasionally run one.
They occasionally do.
Yeah,
when they can, you know, when they feel like it.
It's their drivers who really run that team.
Well, the drivers can't criticize the car though. That's the caveat. All right. Well, everybody, thanks for listening to F1 or F Off. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. If you want to hit us up, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter, X, whatever, Threads, and wherever else you listen to F1 or F Off. And I want to clarify, too, when we say hit us up, we mean send us a message and say hello. Just in case that's just in case that's like stopped any of you, and you're just what do they mean?
What does he mean? Oh my God!
Why
Why would I hit him? Oh.
I don't want to hit these guys.
Oh,
I wish
no.
I could send them a message. They didn't give me the go-ahead clear for that one.
Let's just put a pin in that one.
We'll just put a pin in that one until they give me permission. Don't want to be rude. Anyway, you can email us. You can email us if you'd like to. At F1 or F Off podcast, all one word, at gmail.com. Please give us a 5-star review or a 4-star review. Honestly, I'll take a 4-star. That's fine. If you got
3.5 is cool too.
You know, 3.5. Yeah, 3.5 is fine. Yeah. If you're giving us a 3, it'd be like, you know, we'd ask, like, why not the extra star? You know, why just 3?
Yeah.
Same with 2. Can I just say that if you give somebody a 2-star review, you might as well just give them a 1-star review. Honestly,
this is something I talk about frequently.
What's the 2? What's the 2nd star really doing?
When it comes to like 5-star reviews, real talk. First off, review us 5 stars. But in general, in life, for everything else, right? If you get a 3-star, that's good, right? Like, in my opinion, if I look at a restaurant and it's a 3-star out of 5, that means average. That means they're fine, right? 4 means excellent. 5 means it's one of the best experiences of my life. 2 means it's passable. 1 is just do not go. That's what it should be.
1
because
is you will see more of the bathroom than the actual dining area.
Because my thing is like, what's the point of the granularity if you don't ever use it? You know what I mean?
Well,
at that point, you might as well make it a 3-star.
Well, here's the thing. I have definitely dated people in the past that refuse to go to a restaurant that's not 5-star. And like, so for them, a 4-star review is like, nope, absolutely not. And I'm like,
4-star? That's an 80%. That's an 8 out of 10.
That's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? But I mean, yeah. But also, like, it's like when you do those things. It's like, do you agree or strongly agree? And I'm
Right.
like, why are you giving me the strongly agree answer?
Agree-
Like,
yeah.
what are you gonna think? Like, if I just say, well, I just agree, but I'm not
Well,
like passionate.
strongly
about
agree
it.
would be like, oh yeah. That's what strongly agree would be. You know.
You just start sweating and shaking. You're just
man,
like,
I love
agree
Chipotle.
so much. I agree so much. Like, I mean, I don't give me the, it's the same with those paddock passes. It's like, just have, if you're going to have a version of things, just say this is the good,
Yeah.
better, best. You know what I mean?
You don't
It's
want
like,
ultra soft, hyper soft, super soft.
I don't want to, I don't hyper agree with this statement. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, that would be hilarious though. Could you imagine like neutral, agree, super agree, ultra agree, hyper agree, like, and just have like the tires. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Anyway, but
yeah. You hyper agree. You hyper agree.
we can all hyper agree on the fact that you should leave us a 5-star.
Yeah, there's a 5-star review,
wherever
in
you
short,
can.
yes.
Because we believe we deserve it. You might not, but we think we do. So we'll say that. And as always, please share this podcast with your family, your friends, and all the people who do not hyper agree with you and your lifestyle. Anybody who strongly agrees with who you are as a person fundamentally, still send them the podcast, and we'll just annoy the hell out of them because that's what we do here at F1 or F off. Okay.
All right.
So
Cool. Thanks, y'all.
thanks.
Because we hyper agree.
We hyper agree.